I am Samuel Reed, a 68-year-old man who buried his wife this morning under a sky as gray as the sea that surrounds Harbor Point. Margaret and I spent 43 years together, building a quiet life in this cold coastal town where the wind never fully rests and the gulls scream like they're warning you about something you can't see. I stood beside her coffin as the pastor spoke words I couldn't hear, because all I could think about was how small she looked, how still, how wrong it felt that the one person who always made the world make sense could leave me behind in it. I should have been allowed to mourn her in peace, but fate or something darker had different plans. It happened in the middle of the service, just as I lowered my head to pray. A hand gripped my arm hard enough to bruise, and a voice whispered into my ear, trembling but sharp as a blade. "Sam, I found something. You need to come to my place tonight, and listen carefully. Don't tell Aaron or Clara. You could be in danger." From that moment on, everything I thought I knew about loss, about family, about trust, began to unravel. I turned and saw Walter Briggs, Margaret's older brother, standing with his jaw clenched and his eyes darting over the mourners as if someone among them might be listening. Walter wasn't a man easily shaken. He was a retired financial crimes investigator, someone who had spent a lifetime seeing people's worst decisions and learning how to navigate the rot beneath their polished smiles. But the way he held onto my arm, like he was afraid to let go, told me something was terribly wrong. I tried to speak, but before I could form a word, Walter released my arm and stepped back into the crowd. The pastor continued reading scripture. The choir hummed and Margaret's casket lowered slowly into the earth. Yet all I could hear was Walter's voice repeating inside my skull. "I found something. You could be in danger." What could he possibly mean? Why would I be in danger? And why on earth would he warn me not to tell my own son or daughter-in-law? A gust of ocean wind swept through the cemetery, rattling the wreaths and bending the tips of the tall grass. My suit jacket slapped against my ribs, and for a moment I felt off balance, as if the entire ground beneath me had shifted. I gripped the railing next to me and tried to steady my breath, but unease curled through me like cold smoke. Something wasn't right. Something had been wrong for a long time, long before Margaret took her final breath. When the service ended, people approached one by one to offer condolences. I nodded, murmured thank yous, shook hands. I didn't recognize, accepted hugs I didn't want. My mind wasn't with them. It drifted to Margaret's waning months, the way she had grown weaker, quieter, more distracted. How many times had she tried to tell me something only to stop mid-sentence when Aaron or Clara walked into the room? How many times had I brushed off her unease because I didn't want to imagine my own child could ever be a threat? I hated myself for even thinking that way, but the memory refused to loosen its grip. Now, with Walter's warning digging into my bones, I couldn't ignore it anymore. As the crowd thinned, I spotted Aaron and Clara standing near the parked cars. They weren't grieving. They weren't even pretending. Aaron kept glancing at his watch, tapping the face with agitated fingers, while Clara leaned toward him, whispering urgently. The two of them looked more like people discussing a business deal than a couple mourning a mother. When they saw me looking, Clara transformed instantly, her face softening into an expression of gentle concern as she approached with carefully choreographed steps. Her blonde hair was pinned neatly behind her ears, and her black dress looked expensive, tailored perfect. Too perfect. She placed a warm hand on my forearm. "Dad," she said softly, "why don't you come with us? We need to talk about a few things. Important things. Important." That word landed like a stone in my gut. "Not now," I said quietly. "Please." Aaron joined us, his tall frame blocking the late afternoon sun. "It really can't wait," he insisted. His voice was low and impatient, as if I were a stubborn client rather than his grieving father. "There are documents the lawyer needs, financial matters." "Today," I asked. "At your mother's funeral." His jaw tightened. "There's a timeline we have to meet. A timeline. Documents, urgency. Everything about their behavior was wrong. Why were they so desperate for me to sign something? And why did Walter tell me not to trust them?" Before I could respond, the funeral director approached to ask me to sign a form. Aaron and Clara stepped aside, but not far. They hovered like shadows at the edge of my vision. I signed quickly just to end the conversation, then turned back toward the cemetery gate. I needed to get away from them, if only for a moment, but as I walked, I felt their eyes following me, one pair calculating, the other assessing. The expression on Clara's face wasn't grief. It wasn't even sadness. It was focus. Cold, controlled focus. She looked like someone who had rehearsed for this day, not someone devastated by the loss of a mother-in-law. I reached the gate and looked back once more. Walter had disappeared entirely. Aaron and Clara were speaking in hushed, frantic tones again. And Margaret's coffin rested in the earth between us, as if she were a silent witness to her own unfinished story. The sky darkened as I made my way toward the parking lot, the coastal air thick with sea spray and the metallic scent of rain. My hands trembled slightly as I opened my car door. I sat for a moment before starting the engine, letting the quiet settle over me. For years I had trusted my family without question. For years I had believed in the simple goodness of blood ties. But that belief felt fragile now, like an old photograph beginning to fade. As I drove away from the cemetery, I replayed Walter's words again and again. "I found something. Come to my place tonight. Don't tell Aaron or Clara. You could be in danger." The caution in his voice was unlike anything I'd ever heard from him. The road wound upward toward Harbor Point's cliffside neighborhoods, and the first drops of rain began tapping against the windshield. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, navigating the curves with care. The further I drove from town, the stronger the wind became, pushing against the car, as if urging me to turn back. But I didn't. I couldn't. I needed answers. Halfway up the hill, a flicker of movement in the rearview mirror made me tense. A dark sedan had pulled onto the road behind me. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just another driver heading home after the funeral. But the timing felt too precise, too deliberate. I slowed slightly around a bend. The sedan slowed too. My heartbeat ticked up. I reminded myself to breathe, forced my foot to stay steady on the gas. Another bend, another straightaway. The sedan stayed behind me, never passing, never falling back, just following. At the next intersection, I turned abruptly onto a narrow road leading toward the cliffs. The sedan continued straight without hesitation, disappearing from view. Relief washed through me, though unease still coiled tight in my stomach. Was I imagining danger everywhere now? Or was danger truly everywhere? By the time I reached my driveway, the sky had turned nearly black. I stepped out of the car and inhaled the cold air, letting the wind sting my face until my thoughts became clearer. In the dim light, my home looked exactly as it always had, quiet, familiar, safe. But I no longer trusted the way things looked. Inside, the house felt too still. The silence pressed against my ears, thick with absence. For the first time in decades, Margaret wasn't sitting in her favorite chair or humming softly while tidying the kitchen. Her slippers still rested by the fireplace. A shawl she had knitted last winter lay folded neatly on the armrest. The emptiness made my chest ache. I sank into the chair opposite hers, running my fingers over the worn fabric. "What were you trying to tell me, Margaret?" I whispered into the room. "What were you afraid of?" But the house offered no answers. I stayed there until the clock on the mantel struck 6. Then I stood, took my coat from the hook, and headed back out into the storm. Walter's house sat high on the ridge overlooking the ocean, a secluded wood-framed structure built decades ago to withstand the harsh coastal winds. If he said he found something, I believed him. And if he told me I was in danger, I needed to hear what he knew. As I backed out of the driveway, I glanced toward the window of the guest bedroom, the room where Aaron and Clara slept whenever they visited. A faint light flickered behind the curtains. Had I left that lamp on? I couldn't remember. I forced the thought away. I couldn't afford to let paranoia consume me. Yet as I drove toward Walter's house, one truth became impossible to ignore. My wife had died under circumstances I never questioned. Now I wasn't sure if I had ever truly known the people closest to me. And whatever secret Walter had uncovered, whatever danger he believed surrounded me, began with the woman I loved and ended with the family I thought I could trust. I kept driving through the rain, heading toward the one man who might finally reveal the truth. The road leading to Walter's house twisted upward along the cliffside, the rain turning heavy enough that my wipers struggled to keep up. The ocean roared somewhere below, invisible in the darkness, but loud enough to feel like a warning. By the time I reached the narrow gravel driveway, my hands were cold from gripping the steering wheel too tightly. Walter's house stood alone at the top, a weather-beaten cabin of gray wood and tall windows that glowed faintly through the storm. A single lamp burned in the living room, flickering like a tired heartbeat. I stepped out of the car and hurried toward the porch. The wind clawed at my coat, whipping my hair into my face. When I reached the door, I knocked twice, expecting Walter to answer immediately, the way he usually did. But there was no sound from inside. I knocked again. "Walter, it's me." Footsteps finally shuffled behind the door, and when it opened, Walter's face appeared pale and drawn. He looked older than he had at the funeral, older, more fragile. His eyes darted past me into the driveway, scanning the darkness, before he pulled me inside and locked the door with 2 sharp clicks. "You came," he said, releasing a breath he seemed to have been holding for hours. "Good. We don't have as much time as I hoped." "What is this about?" I asked. "What did you find?" Walter didn't answer immediately. Instead, he led me toward the living room where a low fire burned in the stove. Papers were spread across his coffee table, folders, handwritten notes, printed documents, and a small black notebook that I recognized instantly. I felt a pinprick in my chest. "Is that Margaret's?" Walter nodded. "I found it in the garage, hidden behind a box of winter blankets." He gestured toward the armchair across from him, and I sat slowly, my heart beating louder with every passing second. The rain hammered the windows as if trying to force its way in. Sam Walter began folding his hands together. Margaret didn't just get sick. She suspected something long before her body started failing. My breath caught. "Suspected what?" He pushed the notebook toward me. "Read." I reached for it with trembling hands. Margaret's handwriting, soft, looping, careful, filled the first page. She had dated it 8 months earlier. "Sam isn't well. He says he's tired, but this feels different. He's dizzy more often. He's losing his appetite. I need to look into this." I frowned. "I don't remember this." "You wouldn't," Walter said quietly. "She kept it from you." I turned the page. Aaron came by again. "He says he needs us to co-sign a loan." I told him no. He didn't take it well. After he left, Sam felt faint. "I don't trust this. Something's wrong." The next page was scribbled with numbers, transaction amounts, bank names, arrows connecting suspicious entries. I looked up at Walter. This can't be right. Our finances were fine. Were he corrected? Not anymore. He handed me a printed bank statement. Several withdrawals appeared in red ink, each circled $3,000 to the $500, $4,000 amounts I had never authorized. "These were made using your online credentials," Walter said. But you never logged in on those dates. She checked. I felt the room tilt slightly. The fire popped in the stove. Why didn't she tell me? I whispered. She tried, Walter said. But every time she tried to talk to you, Aaron or Clara interrupted. Margaret was starting to think it wasn't a coincidence. I shook my head slowly. My son. My own flesh and blood, no. There had to be some explanation. Something rational, something other than, "Look at the last page," Walter said. I flipped to the back of the notebook. There, scribbled hurriedly and underlined twice, were the words, "If something happens to me, Walt will know what to do." My mouth went dry. Walter, what did she mean? He leaned back in his chair, his eyes heavy with sorrow. Margaret believed someone was trying to poison her. My heart lurched. That's impossible. She had heart failure. Heart failure caused by months of systematic poisoning, Walter said. Low doses, undetectable at first. Fatigue, hair loss, heart palpitations. You saw the symptoms, Sam. You lived with her. Don't tell me you didn't notice something was off. I had noticed. God help me, I had. But I had chalked it up to stress, to age, to the weight of life. Never, not once, had I allowed myself to imagine foul play. Poison, I whispered. From who? Walter held out another sheet of paper, this one, an old laboratory report. This was her first blood test. The doctor dismissed the irregularities as diet-related, but Margaret kept the original copy. Look at the arsenic level. The number was slightly above normal, nothing alarming, but noticeable enough for someone with Walter's background. And this, he said, handing me another document, is the version submitted to the hospital's digital chart. The arsenic figure had been altered. Changed, Walter said. Someone with access to patient records modified it. And only a handful of people in Harbor Point Medical have access, including Clara. I felt a sharp twist in my stomach. Clara had worked at the hospital for 6 months, the year Margaret started declining. She had claimed she left because of stress. Walter, I said, voice cracking, this is too much. You're talking about murder. I'm talking about evidence, he replied firmly. And this isn't all of it. Margaret gathered far more than I expected. Look. He opened a folder labeled Financial Fraud and spread the papers across the table. There were receipts I didn't recognize, loan statements under my name. A credit card application Margaret had handwritten, "This is not Samuel's signature," across. There were screenshots of bank transfers to accounts I'd never seen before. My hands shook violently. I never authorized any of this. Never. I know, Walter said. Margaret knew too. That's why she started digging. And the deeper she dug, the more frightened she became. I stared at the scattered evidence, each piece a blow to the chest. Why did she keep it from me? I whispered again. Walter sighed. Because she wasn't sure who she could trust. I flinched as if he had struck me. You think she doubted me? No, he said gently. She doubted Aaron. I closed my eyes. For years I had watched my son struggle job after job, financial mistake after financial mistake. But I had always believed he would grow out of it. That he was just unlucky. That his heart was good. Sam, Walter said quietly. Margaret believed Aaron and Clara were planning something. Something involving both of you. I opened my eyes, barely breathing. Planning what? He hesitated only a moment before answering. To take everything. Your savings, your home, and eventually, your life. The room buzzed in my ears. I gripped the arms of the chair to keep myself upright. No, I said weakly. No, they wouldn't. They couldn't. Walter placed a steady hand on my shoulder. Margaret thought they were poisoning you too. Small doses, every morning. in the coffee Clara insisted on making. A memory flashed, Clara handing me my mug each morning, always smiling, always insisting she liked helping around the house. Some mornings I'd felt dizzy. Some mornings my heart raced. I swallowed hard. "Are you absolutely sure?" Walter nodded grimly. "I tested the residue from one of your used mugs. It's not conclusive, but it's enough to be suspicious." I felt sick. The thought that my own daughter-in-law could be slipping something into my drink made my skin crawl. The idea that my son could be part of it made my chest tighten painfully. "Sam," Walter continued, lowering his voice, "I didn't want to tell you this at the funeral, but Margaret visited me 3 weeks before she died. She said she was scared. She said she thought someone was controlling your finances behind your back. And she said if anything happened to her, I was to protect you." My throat closed. "Why didn't she come to me?" "She tried," Walter said. "But she knew Aaron was watching her, watching both of you." I looked at the fire for a long moment, trying to absorb everything. The flames shifted, casting warped shadows across the walls, as if the cabin itself were recoiling from the truth. "What do we do now?" I finally asked. Walter rose from his chair and walked to a small cabinet. He opened it and pulled out a sealed envelope. "Margaret left this as well." I took it carefully. Inside were 2 USB drives and a sheet of paper with a list of dates, bank withdrawals, text messages, times when Aaron and Clara had stopped by unexpectedly. "She was building a case," Walter said. "She just didn't live long enough to finish it." My hands trembled. I felt both overwhelmed and hollow. The wind rattled the windows again. Walter stepped closer, his voice tight. "Sam, someone followed you earlier. Didn't they?" I hesitated, then nodded. "I think so. A dark sedan. It stayed behind me for a while." Walter cursed under his breath. "They're watching you. They know Margaret suspected something. And if you have these files now, you're the loose end they need to cut." A cold fist closed around my spine. "You think they'll come after me?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Unless we act first." I rose slowly, gripping the back of the chair to steady myself. The reality of the situation pressed down on me from all sides: betrayal, danger, loss. But beneath the fear, something else began to form. Something sharper. Something that felt like resolve. "What do you need me to do?" I asked. "We need to get these files to someone who can help," Walter said. "I've already contacted a detective I trust. But first you need to be extremely careful when you go home. Don't eat anything, don't drink anything, and don't sign a single piece of paper." I blinked. Why would I sign anything? Walter looked at me with a grim expression. "Because I think Aaron and Clara are going to ask you again tonight." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the room for a brief, blinding moment. The storm intensified, as if mirroring the weight of everything Walter had laid before me. I exhaled shakily. "You're saying my own son wants me dead?" Walter didn't soften his answer. "I'm saying your wife died trying to protect you. And now, it's your turn to protect yourself." The fire crackled. Thunder rolled across the cliffs. And I realized my life had just changed forever. I didn't leave Walter's house until well past midnight. The rain had softened into a heavy mist, the kind that settled over everything like a second skin. The drive back down the cliff was slow and cautious, every curve of the road illuminated only by my trembling headlights. My mind replayed every word Walter had said, every page of Margaret's notebook, every red flag I had ignored, no refused to see. By the time I turned onto my neighborhood street, the mist had thickened into a fog that obscured the familiar houses and lampposts. I cut the engine and coasted quietly into my driveway. Before stepping out, I scanned the street. Everything was still. Too still. The dark sedan was gone. But the absence of danger didn't feel like safety. It felt like preparation. I unlocked the front door carefully and stepped inside. The house was dark, except for a faint glow coming from the hallway. The soft, rhythmic humming hit me before anything else, a tune Clara often hummed when she was cleaning or cooking, a tune I had always associated with warmth. Now it made my stomach twist. I followed the sound down the hallway and peeked into the kitchen. There she was. Clara stood barefoot at the counter, her hair tied back, wearing loose pajamas. She didn't look startled or sleepy or concerned that I was home late. She looked expectant, as if she had been waiting. "Oh, Sam," she said, smiling softly. "You're back. I wanted to check on you after today. It was such a long, painful day for all of us." Her voice was smooth, sympathetic in all the right places. If I hadn't known what she was capable of, I might have believed her. "I'm fine," I said quietly, keeping distance between us. "Just needed some air." She nodded and reached into the cabinet. "I made tea. Thought it might help you settle." "Do you want some?" My pulse spiked so fast, I felt it in my throat. Walter's warning echoed loudly. "Don't drink anything. Not a single thing." "No," I said. "I'm not thirsty." Clara's smile flickered. It was brief, so brief that if I hadn't been watching her like a hawk, I would have missed it. "That's all right," she said pleasantly. "I'll save it for you if you change your mind." She poured the tea into a cup anyway and set it on the table near my favorite chair. Steam drifted upward in delicate white ribbons. I swallowed hard. "Where's Aaron?" I asked. "Asleep," she replied. "He was exhausted from the funeral and from worrying about you. You disappeared without a word." I walked past her, pretending not to notice the subtle shift in her tone. I needed some time alone. "Well," she said, brushing invisible crumbs off the counter, "we were worried. We didn't know if you were okay. You didn't answer your phone." I turned it off. She nodded slowly, leaning back against the counter. "Sam, you know you can talk to us, right? About anything. Your grief, your worries. The future. The future." She let the word linger heavy and deliberate. My gut twisted again. "I'm tired," I said. "I'm going to bed." She stepped aside gracefully. "Of course. Get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow." As I walked toward the stairs, she called after me, her voice warm and calm. "Don't forget your tea." I didn't look back. Upstairs, I closed my bedroom door softly and locked it. Then I pushed a chair against the knob. My hands trembled as I sank onto the edge of the bed. Every breath came ragged, shallow. It wasn't just fear, it was betrayal curling itself around my ribs, squeezing tight. I thought about Margaret, about how she must have felt day after day, realizing someone she welcomed into our family was slowly killing her. I had been by her side the entire time, blind to the truth, blind to her fear, blind to the dangers she couldn't say aloud. My body ached with guilt. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the USB drives Walter had given me. I stared at them for a long time, the weight of them far heavier than their size suggested. I placed them under the floorboard beneath my bed, the same hiding spot where I used to stash my wedding anniversary gifts before surprising Margaret each year. She had always found them. She said it was because she knew me so well. I wondered now if she also found the things she was not supposed to find. Around 2 a.m., I finally lay down, though sleep didn't come. Every creak of the house made my heart jump. Every shadow on the wall felt like a threat. I must have closed my eyes at some point, because the next thing I remembered was the soft creak of the floor outside my room. My eyes flew open. Footsteps, slow, careful, moving closer. I sat up silently. The chair pressed against the door trembled slightly. A soft knock. Dad Aaron's voice. Strained, forced, gentle. Are you awake? My chest tightened. What is it? I just wanted to check on you, he said. You came home late. Clara said you seemed off. Off. Poisoned, maybe. That's what they were hoping. I'm fine, I answered. A pause. Too long. Can I come in? No, I said quickly. I'm trying to sleep. Another pause, then footsteps backing away. But they didn't go downstairs immediately. I heard whispering. His voice. Clara's voice. Muffled but tense. Urgent. Then silence. My heart pounded until dawn. When daylight finally crept through the curtains, I sat up and watched the fog outside dissolve into pale morning light. My body felt stiff, my mind fogged with exhaustion and fear. But I had clarity about one thing: I needed to leave the house. I needed to get the evidence to the detective Walter had mentioned, and I needed to stay alive long enough to do it. I waited until I heard movement downstairs. Clara humming again, a pan clattering, Aaron muttering something about checking emails. The normality of their morning routine was horrifyingly surreal. I stepped into the hallway. As I descended the stairs, both of them looked up. Clara smiled first. Morning, Sam. I made breakfast. I glanced at the plate eggs toast and a small side cup of vitamins, which Clara often mixed into Margaret's meals. The same vitamins that now made my skin crawl. No, thank you, I said. I'm not hungry. Aaron leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Dad, we need to talk today. We need to sort things out. About the house, about the insurance. I froze inside, though I kept my face neutral. Not today. We can't put this off forever. He said, a hard edge creeping into his voice. I said not today. The room thickened with tension. Clara stepped in smoothly, placing a gentle hand on Aaron's arm. It's okay. Give him time, she murmured. They exchanged a look, silent, calculating, perfectly in sync. I forced myself to breathe. I'm going out, I said. Aaron frowned. Where? For a walk. Clara tilted her head. Do you want company? No. I grabbed my coat and walked out before they could stop me. As soon as I was on the street, I pulled out my phone and dialed the number Walter had given me. Detective Morales. The call rang once before connecting. Samuel Reed, a deep voice said. Yes, I whispered. This line is secure, Morales said. Walter filled me in. I want to meet. Can you get somewhere safe? I looked around. Trees, houses, fog drifting lazily through the morning light. All of it looked normal, yet none of it felt safe. Yes, I finally said. Tell me where. Harbor Point Library, he replied. Back a reading room, 20 minutes. Come alone and don't bring anything from the house. I understand. And Sam, yes, do not under any circumstances eat or drink anything until I see you. I shut off the phone, my pulse racing. A cold wind swept down the street, rustling the leaves and sending a shiver through me. When I turned back toward the house, I saw it. The curtains in the living room shifted. Someone was watching. I no longer had the luxury of hoping I was wrong about my son. The danger Margaret had feared was no longer a quiet suspicion. It was awake. It was watching me. And it knew I was running out of time. The fog was beginning to lift by the time I reached the Harbor Point Library, but my nerves were still coiled tight beneath my skin. Each passing car made me flinch. Every pedestrian behind me felt too close. It wasn't paranoia, not anymore. It was survival. I kept my pace brisk, but not hurried, careful not to draw attention. The library sat on the corner across from the marina, its tall brick facade softened by climbing ivy and years of coastal wind. It was always a peaceful place. Today it felt like neutral ground, the only place in Harbor Point where I might still be invisible. I pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped inside. The warm, dry scent of paper and old varnish washed over me. Not many people came to the library early in the morning, so the lobby was quiet. A librarian at the front desk offered me a polite nod. I nodded back and walked deeper inside toward the rows of shelves that stretched like corridors into silence. The back reading room was nearly empty. Just a few scattered tables, tall windows overlooking the harbor, and an elderly man asleep over a newspaper. I picked a corner seat where I could see every entrance. My hands wouldn't stop trembling, so I clasped them together to hide the shake. A few moments later, the door opened with a soft click. A man stepped inside, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark gray jacket and jeans not flashy. Bạn đã nói Việt chương 4. Bằng tiếng Anh khoảng 1,600 từ theo dàn ý đã có. Không phân tích, không giới thiệu, bắt đầu ngay bằng câu đầu tiên. Chỉ xuống dòng giữa các đoạn, không dùng gạch kể hết dòng. Phải hoàn toàn sẵn sàng để chuyển sang voice over 11 lap mà không cần chỉnh sửa thêm. ChatGPT đã nói understood. Here is Chapter 4, rewritten cleanly from the beginning, fully aligned with your outline, and ready for voiceover. No analysis, no headings, no commentary, just the chapter. Chapter 4. Final version, 1,300 to 1,600 words. I reached the Harbor Point Library 15 minutes early. Though I had walked slowly, deliberately changing sidewalks twice just to be sure no one followed me. The fog had thinned, but my chest was still tight with the feeling of eyes pressing against my back. When I stepped through the library's glass doors, a gust of warm, book-scented air rushed over me, and for the first time that morning my heartbeat eased just a little. The library was nearly empty at this hour. A young man wearing headphones studied at a table near the front. An older woman sorted returns behind the counter. No one looked up when I entered. No Aaron, no Clara. No dark sedan. I moved toward the back reading room the way Walter had instructed. Past the reference shelves. Past the row of outdated computers. Each step echoed too loudly in my ears. The back room was quiet, lit by tall windows facing the marina. A few tables sat in neat rows, sunlight beginning to seep weakly across their surfaces. I chose a seat in the corner back to the wall facing the entrance. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. At exactly 18 minutes past the hour, the door opened. A tall man stepped in, his posture straight, his hair closely trimmed, his jacket clean but practical. Everything about him said discipline and weariness in equal measure. His eyes found mine immediately, and he crossed the room with quiet confidence before taking the seat across from me. "Mr. Reed," he said in a low voice. "Detective Morales." His voice was steady, grounded. The kind of voice you instinctively trust, except trust had become a rare commodity in my life. "Thank you for coming," I whispered. "I should be thanking you," he said. "Most people in your situation wouldn't have the clarity to ask for help. Most people didn't know their wife had been murdered by their own family. Most people didn't know they were next." I swallowed hard. "Walter told you everything. He told me enough." Morales answered. "I need to hear the rest from you." I nodded slowly and reached into my coat pocket, pulling out Margaret's notebook, the smaller one Walter had insisted I bring. The more sensitive documents and USB drives were still hidden under the floorboard at home. Morales kept his hands folded on the table, waiting. "She started writing this when she noticed money missing," I said. "At first she thought it was a bank error. Then she thought maybe I had made a mistake. But when she compared statements, she realized withdrawals were being made when neither of us were home." "Your son had your login credentials?" he asked. "Not officially," I replied. "But he used to help me check the accounts. I thought he was just helping." Morales gave a grim nod. "That's how it starts." I opened the notebook to the marked page, the one with Margaret's underlined phrases, her markings circling dates that matched withdrawals I could not explain. She found signatures that weren't mine, loans I never signed, transfers to accounts we didn't own. She confronted me once about a missing check, and I told her she must have misplaced it. Now I know I was trying to protect the last image I had of my son. And then Morales pressed gently. Then she started getting sick, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. By then, Aaron and Clara were around more, helping, bringing food, bringing coffee, checking in, always checking in. Convenient, Morales muttered. Too convenient, I agreed. Margaret noticed. She wrote here. I turned another page and read the line aloud. He stayed past midnight again, watching me, watching Sam. I don't feel safe. My throat tightened. She wrote that 3 weeks before she died, I added. Morales leaned in slightly. Mr. Reed, I have to ask. Did your wife ever tell her doctor about her concerns? Yes. Dr. Lopez. But the lab results were wrong. Walter compared them. Her arsenic levels were altered. All right, Morales said slowly. I need the name of anyone who had access to her digital charts. My stomach dropped. Clara worked at the hospital during that time. His jaw tensed. Of course she did. He leaned back, running a thumb across the edge of the notebook. This is substantial, he said. But what happened last night? Walter said someone followed you. I recounted the car behind me. The silhouette in the driver's seat. The way the sedan slowed whenever I did. Morales' eyes sharpened. That wasn't random, he said. No, I replied, and when I got home, Clara was awake in the kitchen. She offered me tea. She insisted. She placed it on the table near my chair. He exhaled deeply. Do you still have the Tino? I didn't touch it. Good. Do not ingest anything in that house. Nothing. Not food, not water, not vitamins. Nothing. My voice cracked. Detective, do you really think Margaret was poisoned? He hesitated for only a fraction of a second. Yes. The word landed like a hammer. I felt myself fold inward, gripping the notebook as if it were the only thing anchoring me to the room. Mr. Reed Morales continued, lowering his tone. If your wife was poisoned, the same person or people will not hesitate to finish the job, especially if they think you've discovered something. I nodded shakily. I know. Did they ask you to sign anything recently? He asked. I looked up quickly. Yes, yesterday. They brought forms, said it was for the house, for insurance, for handling bills. Margaret never mentioned any paperwork like that. Morales' expression hardened. Did you sign anything? No, I said. My wife raised me stubborn enough not to sign anything without sleep. A hint of a smile flickered on his face. Good habit. That stubbornness likely saved your life. He took a breath and leaned closer. Mr. Reed, I believe your son and daughter-in-law are involved in financial fraud at minimum and possibly murder. But suspicion isn't enough. If we move too early, they'll walk. We need evidence. Real evidence. The kind that leaves no doubt in a courtroom. They almost caught me last night, I said. And this morning? Aaron stood outside my bedroom door, asking to come in, asking where I had gone. They're on edge. They know something's wrong. That means they're getting desperate, Morales replied, which also means they'll make mistakes. But until then, you must act normal. The thought made my stomach roll. Normal, I echoed. Pretend you know nothing, eat nothing, drink nothing, sign nothing, and stay out of the house as much as possible. I pressed my palms together to keep them from trembling. Detective, how do we stop them before they stop me? Morales opened a plain folder he had carried in under his jacket. Inside were forms, photos, and what looked like a diagram of a house. Walter told me your home has a walkout basement with a small window, he said. Is that right? Yes, I replied. It's how I used to sneak out for fishing trips when Margaret wanted me to rest. Then it's how you're going to sneak out again when the time comes, Morales said. I stared at him. "When the time comes for what? For us to catch them," he said. "Not on suspicion, not on motive, but in the act." A cold shiver moved down my arms. "Detective, I'm a 70-year-old man. I'm not a spy. I'm not a decoy." "No," Morales agreed. "But you are the only person they want to poison. That gives us leverage and a very narrow window to act." He placed a small metallic button on the table. "This is a recording device," he explained. "Walter said you could handle wearing one." I stared at the device. It looked harmless, insignificant. It was the difference between life and death. "If Clara or Aaron attempt to serve you anything," Morales continued, "you press the underside of this button. We'll be listening from an unmarked van 2 streets over. We will enter the house the moment poison is introduced. But the key is, you must not consume any of it." "I understand." "Good. Now, I need everything you can remember about the forms they brought yesterday." I described them as best I could. The blue folder, the highlighted tabs, the way Aaron hovered behind me as I pretended to read. Morales listened, nodding slowly. "Power of attorney," he said softly. "Or worse, an altered will. They were preparing to clean up after you, Mr. Reed." My breath faltered. "Jesus. I know this is hard," he said gently. "But everything you're telling me lines up with deliberate long-term planning. And if Margaret found evidence she became a liability, they needed to remove." "Detective," I whispered. "They killed my wife." "And they will answer for it," he said. "But we need the final piece." "What piece?" "The poisoning attempt on you." My pulse thudded painfully in my ears. "You want me to invite them to do it?" "I want you to let them believe they succeeded the first time," Morales corrected. "Make them feel confident. Make them comfortable. And when they try again, we catch them." I felt dizzy. The room tilted slightly. "Mr. Reed," Morales said, steadying his voice, "your wife died fighting to save you. She gathered evidence. She kept notes. She reached out to Walter. She left us a trail. You're not doing this alone. We're finishing her work. Together." The words hit me harder than any threat Aaron or Clara had ever posed. For a moment I couldn't speak. Then I nodded. "All right," I said hoarsely. "Tell me exactly what I need to do." Morales outlined the plan slowly, methodically, focusing on my safety at every step. I listened, committing each detail to memory. When he finished, he closed his folder. "Are you ready?" he asked. "No. But I had to be." "Yes," I said, "for Margaret." He stood, offering a firm nod. "We move carefully," he said, "and we move soon." As he left the reading room, the library felt different, no longer a refuge, but the calm before a storm. I waited a full minute before rising from my chair. My legs felt unsteady, my breath thin, but I forced myself to walk out into the morning light. When I stepped outside, the fog had burned away completely. The harbor was quiet. The street was still. And yet as I started down the sidewalk, the hairs on the back of my neck rose. Someone nearby was watching, waiting. The game had begun. I walked home from the library with Detective Morales' plan looping through my mind like a warning siren. Every instruction, every precaution, every subtle cue I needed to hit it all weighed heavily on me, yet somehow sharpened something inside me too. Fear and purpose had fused into a single trembling resolve. I was no longer just a grieving husband. I was a man fighting for the truth my wife had died trying to reveal. By the time my house came into view, the sun had climbed just high enough to cast an unforgiving light over everything. The peeling paint on the porch, the flower beds Margaret once tended, the front curtain still half open from when Clara peeked out earlier. Every detail felt like a ghost of the life I used to know. A life that had ended long before the funeral. I slowed at the walkway. My front door opened before I reached it. Aaron stepped out. He looked freshly showered, hair slicked back, dressed in a button-up and jeans. He smiled when he saw me, but it didn't reach his eyes. If anything, the smile looked relieved, like he feared I wouldn't return, and now a burden had been removed. "There you are," he said, walking toward me. "We were getting worried." I asked. "Yeah. Clara and me." His voice was casual, too casual, forced, rehearsed. He shoved his hands into his pockets, glancing behind me toward the street. "You were out a while," he added. "Where'd you go?" I shrugged. "Walked. Thought about things." "What kind of things?" His tone was light, but the question wasn't. It was probing. It was a knife disguised as curiosity. I kept my face expressionless. Memories, Margaret, life. He nodded slowly, studying me for cracks. I gave him none. "Well," he said, clapping his hands together. "Clara's making lunch. Why don't you come inside?" A faint chill slid down my spine. The thought of stepping back into that kitchen, the tea, the vitamins, the careful watching made my stomach tighten. "I'm not hungry," I said. Aaron's smile tightened. "Dad, you've barely eaten. You should have something." "I'll eat later." He exhaled through his nose, frustration flickering across his face before he covered it. "Fine, but we need to talk at some point." "I know," I answered. He stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter. I did because Morales told me to act normal, because stepping back into the house was part of the plan. Still, the moment the door closed behind me, I felt the danger in the air. It was thick enough to taste. Clara appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. Her lips curved into a warm smile, the same one she'd always used on Margaret and me. "Sam good," she said. "I made soup. Are you sure you don't want any?" "I'll pass," I said. Her smile twitched before settling again. "Of course. Maybe later." She was wearing makeup today, more than usual. Foundation, mascara, a soft shade of lipstick, as if preparing for an occasion, or for company, or for the aftermath. "What's the plan for today?" she asked casually, stirring the pot on the stove. I took a breath. "Actually, I think I'm ready." Both of them looked at me sharply. "Ready for what?" Aaron asked. "For the paperwork," I said, keeping my voice small, defeated. "For the house, the insurance, everything." Relief flooded Aaron's face so quickly it made my stomach sink. Clara's shoulders dropped, a quiet exhale slipping from her lips. "Oh, Sam," she said gently. "That's wonderful, truly." Aaron stepped closer. "We knew you just needed time. It's what Mom would have wanted, you know, for us to handle things, for you not to worry." "Yes," I whispered, lowering my eyes. "That's what I've been thinking. I'll get the folder," Clara said quickly, disappearing into the living room. Aaron watched her go, then turned back to me with a soft pat on my back. "This is the right choice," he murmured. "You won't regret it." I forced myself not to flinch. Clara returned with the blue folder, the same one Morales had warned me about. She placed it on the dining table, smoothing its surface as if presenting a gift. "We can go over everything together," she said. "Not yet," I replied. Her head lifted. "Why not?" "I want one more day," I said. "Just one. I want to make sure I'm thinking clearly. Margaret would want me to think clearly." Aaron's jaw tightened. "Dad?" One day I repeated more firmly, "Then I'll sign." Silence stretched between us. Then Clara placed a calming hand on Aaron's arm. "Of course," she said softly. "One day won't change anything." Aaron nodded stiffly. "Fine. Tomorrow then." I exhaled, inwardly shaken by how close I'd come to folding. "I think I'll lie down," I said. "Do you want anything?" Clara asked. "No." She shrugged lightly. "All right." I walked upstairs, feeling both of their eyes burning into my back until I turned the corner. I closed my bedroom door and leaned against it, breath shaky. They believed me. That was good. Dangerous, but good. I moved the chair back under the knob. Habit, fear, both. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I replayed Morales' instructions again. Act normal. Don't raise suspicion. Don't eat or drink anything. And wait. So I waited. Hours crawled by. I heard them moving downstairs, whispers, footsteps, the occasional slam of a cabinet. Every noise tightened the knot in my stomach. At one point, I heard Aaron laughing, a low, relieved sound, and it chilled me more than anger would have. At dusk, I finally left the room. The house had settled into a strange quiet. Too quiet. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, Clara peered out from the kitchen. "Hi, Sam," she said warmly. "Feeling better?" A little, I lied. Aaron sat at the dining table, laptop open. He closed it when he saw me. "We should eat together," he said. "You need food." "I'm not hungry," I repeated. Clara lifted a steaming bowl. "At least take a few bites." "No, thank you." Her smile strained. Aaron's jaw twitched again. But I didn't budge. "I'm going for another walk," I said. "In the dark?" Clara asked, surprised. "I need the air." Aaron stood abruptly. "I'll go with you." "No," I said firmly. "I want to be alone." Silence stretched. Then Clara forced another soft smile. "Don't stay out too long," she said. I left. I didn't breathe fully until I reached the sidewalk. The sky had darkened to a deep blue. Streetlights flickered on, one by one. I crossed the road and headed toward the marina, where the lights reflected on the water like trembling stars. The air tasted like sea salt and rust, sharp but clean. At the pier's end, I sat on a bench and let the wind cool my face. Tomorrow. Tomorrow was the day Morales planned to move. The day they expected my signature. The day everything would break open one way or another. I stayed on the bench for nearly an hour, letting the minutes stretch long enough to match what someone grieving might need. When I finally rose and started back home, I didn't see the figure at first, not until it stepped out of the alley beside my street lamp. A tall man, hoodie, gloves, face shadowed. He leaned casually against the lamppost as if waiting for someone. I slowed. He lifted his chin in a small, deliberate motion, recognizing me. My pulse spiked. My mind raced through every instruction Morales had given. If this was Drexler's man, the one who'd followed me, it meant they were growing bold. I forced myself not to run. Running would confirm suspicion. Running would confirm fear. So instead, I did what Morales said to do if followed. Act unaware. Act old. Act tired. I kept walking, slow, even. But the man didn't move. Not toward me. Not away. Just watching. When I reached the corner, I dared a glance back. He was gone. By the time I reached my house, my hands were shaking again. I had barely stepped inside when Clara appeared from the hallway. "You're back," she said softly. "We were worried." Worried was not the word. "I'm fine," I said breathlessly. "Just tired." Aaron stepped out from the kitchen. "Dad, what's going on with you today?" "I'm grieving," I said flatly. He opened his mouth to argue, but Clara touched his arm again. "Let him rest," she whispered. I went upstairs without another word. This time I didn't sleep at all. I sat in my room back against the wall, Margaret's notebook tucked beside me, the weight of Morales' recording device still in my pocket. Hours ticked by. Midnight, 1, 2. At 3:17 a.m., I heard them. Footsteps, downstairs, soft murmuring, the shift of a cabinet, the kettle filling, the clink of a spoon, preparing, practicing. They were rehearsing their plan, preparing for tomorrow, preparing for me. I closed my eyes, steadied my breath, and whispered into the darkness, "For you, Margaret." I'll see this through. Tomorrow, the real war would begin. I woke before dawn, though I hadn't slept at all. The sky outside my window was still a muted gray hovering between night and morning. I sat up slowly, my back aching from hours spent pressed against the wall, but there was no time to stretch or rest. Today was the day Morales had warned me about. The day Aaron and Clara expected submission, trust, blind obedience. The day they planned to kill me. My hands trembled as I rose from the bed. The floor felt colder than usual beneath my feet. A strange stillness hung in the air, heavier than the remnants of night. I checked the hallway before stepping out. It was empty, but the smell of brewing coffee drifted up from downstairs, familiar, warm, deceiving. I took a deep breath and went down. Clara stood in the kitchen, stirring something in a small pot on the stove. She turned the moment she heard me. "Good morning, Sam," she said gently, as if I were a skittish animal she didn't want to frighten. "I made your breakfast. Something light in case your stomach is still upset." My stomach tightened. She took a bowl from the counter, oatmeal, steaming, flecked with berries. A cup of coffee sat beside it. The sight made bile rise in my throat. I reminded myself to breathe, to act, to play the part. "Thank you," I managed. Aaron entered from the living room, stretching his arms and yawning dramatically. "Morning, Dad," he said. "We've got a big day ahead, huh?" "Yes," I said quietly. "A big day." He smiled at me, wide, bright, utterly false. He looked like someone who had already decided how the day would end. I forced myself to approach the table, to sit, to lift the spoon. Then, just as I brought it close to my mouth, I accidentally dropped it onto the floor. "Oh," I muttered, bending slowly to pick it up. As I leaned down, I slipped the tiny recording device, Morales button, onto the underside of the table rail, pressing it firmly until the adhesive clicked. When I sat up again, Clara was watching me too closely. "Are you sure you're all right?" she asked. "I'm fine," I said, forcing a tired smile. "Just clumsy this morning." "It's understandable," she said softly. "You've been through so much." Her eyes were cold behind the pitying expression. "Let me get you another spoon," she added, her tone too soft, too smooth. "No," I said quickly. I think I'd rather wait a bit. My stomach isn't settled." Aaron exhaled sharply. "Dad, you need to eat." "I will," I said, "just not yet." He and Clara exchanged a look, quiet, sharp, loaded. Then Clara lifted the cup of coffee and pushed it toward me. "At least drink this. It'll help you relax." I stared at the cup. It was filled nearly to the brim, dark and fragrant the way I used to like it. But now, all I saw was the cause of my wife's death. All I tasted was arsenic. "No," I said. Her eyes narrowed only for a second. "Are you sure?" "Yes." She pulled the cup back, her expression smooth again, almost serene. "Of course." Aaron moved to the table, tapping the blue folder. "Then let's get started. The sooner we take care of this, the sooner you can rest." "I know," I said. "But before we do anything, I want to sit for a while. Clear my head." "Dad, 1 hour," I said. "Let me have 1 hour." He clenched his jaw. "Fine. 1 hour." I stood, feeling both of them watching my every movement as I walked to the living room. I sat in Margaret's old chair, the chair she used for knitting and reading. The cushion still held the faintest trace of her lavender perfume. I closed my eyes and pretended to rest, though my mind raced. After a few minutes, I heard it. Their whispers. The kitchen was only a few yards away. Margaret always said the house carried sound, like secrets rolling down hallways. "What if he doesn't drink it?" Clara whispered harshly. "He will," Aaron said. "He just needs convincing." He didn't eat the oatmeal either. "Did you put—" "Yes," Aaron snapped. "Enough to slow him down, not enough to—" "Do the rest. And the coffee. Double, Aaron whispered. Just like before. My breath caught. Clara exhaled shakily. Then we can move forward, yes, Aaron said. But he needs to sign first, and if he doesn't... A pause. Then we'll figure something out. My heart slammed hard against my ribs. I forced myself to stay still, to breathe evenly, to play the part of a weary old man dozing in his chair. I couldn't risk them knowing I'd heard. Minutes passed. Then Clara entered the room. She approached slowly, wearing a soft expression, the same one she used when adjusting Margaret's pillow or offering her medication. Sam, she said, kneeling beside me. I know all this must be overwhelming. We just want to help. We want to take care of you. I opened my eyes. I know. She placed her hand on mine. Her fingers were warm, gentle, deadly. You trust us, don't you? She asked. I looked directly at her. Of course. She smiled, satisfied. When you're ready, we'll go over the documents. There's no rush. I appreciate that, I said. She squeezed my hand once more, then stood and walked back into the kitchen. I exhaled slowly, every nerve shaking. Morales' device had captured what it needed: their intentions, their plan, their confession. Now, I just had to stay alive long enough for Morales to move. But as the hour passed, the house grew colder. The tension thickened. I could feel Aaron's impatience like a pulse in the walls, the way he paced, the way he sighed, the subtle anger brewing behind every exhale. Finally, he entered the living room. Dad, he said sharply, it's time. I stood slowly. All right. He led me back to the dining table. Clara opened the blue folder, laying several papers out in neat rows. Each page was tabbed with a color-coded sticker. She slid the first document toward me. This one is for the house, she said. This one is for insurance, Aaron added. And this is for power of attorney. Clara said, her tone neutral, almost cheerful. My stomach churned. I picked up the pen, letting it hover above the page. My hand shook genuinely. Not from the act, but from the weight of Margaret's memory pressing into me. Sam, Clara asked gently, do you need help reading it? No, I said. I just need to breathe. Aaron sighed loudly. Dad, this is simple. Just sign. I lowered the pen. Then I set it down. No. Their expressions changed instantly. Masks slipping, frustration swirling beneath the surface. Dad, Aaron said, voice tight, don't make this difficult. We're trying to help you. I don't want to sign anything today, I said. You said you were ready, Clara said, her voice too calm. I changed my mind. Aaron slammed his hand on the table. You can't keep doing this. The force of it jolted me, but I held steady. Clara stood slowly, her expression smoothing into something cold and resolute. Sam, she said softly, you're not thinking clearly. You're grieving. You need us. No, I whispered. I need Margaret. For a moment, something flickered in Clara's eyes, annoyance, fear, rage. I couldn't decipher which. Aaron stepped closer. Too close. Dad. Drink your coffee, he said. My heart pounded hard enough to shake my vision. I'm not thirsty. I said, drink it. His voice cracked, not from emotion, but from losing control. I stepped back. No. He grabbed the cup, his fingers trembling, and thrust it toward me. Drink it! No! The shout echoed through the house. Silence collapsed around us like broken glass. Clara moved first, her voice calm, dangerously calm. Aaron, she said, put it down. He didn't. His knuckles whitened. His chest rose and fell rapidly. Aaron, she repeated, sharper this time, put it down. He finally slammed the cup onto the table, coffee sloshing over the rim. Dark liquid spilled across the papers. Clara hissed. Look what you've done. Dad made me do it, he muttered. No, she snapped. You did this, always losing control. Their whispers turned vicious, jagged. They forgot I was even in the room for a moment. I backed away slowly, my pulse racing, the recording device silently capturing every word. Then suddenly, Clara's gaze snapped back to me. "Sam," she said softly, too softly, "maybe you should lie down. You look pale." "No," I said again. Aaron stepped forward. "Dad, I said no." I repeated louder this time. Clara's expression hardened. Something inside her decision clicked into place. She reached for the cup again, but this time Aaron grabbed her wrist. "I'll do it," he said. "No," she murmured. "You'll screw it up." He glared, but he let go. She turned back toward me, the cup in her hand once more. And that's when it happened. A hard, violent knock rattled the front door. All three of us froze. Another knock. Louder. Aaron turned sharply, eyes wide. Clara stepped back from me, her face draining of color. The knocking came a third time, followed by a voice. "Harbor Point Police Department. Open the door." My breath caught. It was Morales, and he was right on time. The pounding on the front door echoed through the house like thunder. Clara froze, still holding the cup of coffee she had been so desperate for me to drink. Aaron's eyes darted to the doorway, then back to me, then to Clara, wild and panicked. For a moment, none of us moved, suspended in a terrible stillness. "Harbor Point Police Department." The voice called again. "Open the door." Clara recovered first. She snapped her head toward the kitchen sink and whispered sharply, "Dump it. Now." Aaron obeyed immediately, grabbing the cup from her and rushing it to the sink, pouring the coffee down the drain with trembling hands. Clara wiped her palms on her pants, smoothing her hair, adjusting her blouse, trying to erase every sign of the truth. I stepped away from the dining table. My heart was pounding so hard, I could feel it in my fingertips. This was the moment Morales promised, the moment the floor would give way beneath them. But I still had to play my part. "Stay quiet," Clara hissed to Aaron. "Let me talk." Aaron nodded, but his breathing was ragged. Sweat glistened on his forehead. The knocking came again, harder this time. Clara forced a smile and moved toward the door. She took a long breath, then opened it, just a crack. "Yes," she asked, voice sugary sweet. "Can I help you?" Detective Morales' voice cut through the air like a blade. "Mrs. Reed, we need to speak with Mr. Samuel Reed immediately." "Oh," she said with a gentle laugh. "He's busy right now." But Morales didn't wait for her permission. The door pushed open wider, and he stepped inside, badge raised, another officer behind him. Aaron flinched. Clara stiffened. I exhaled quietly. "Mr. Reed," Morales said, scanning the room until his gaze found mine. "I need a word with you." Clara turned sharply. "Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of us. We're his family." "No," Morales said calmly. "This is a private matter." She folded her arms. "Well, he lives in our home, so." "That's enough," Morales said, his tone suddenly ice cold. "Step aside." Clara blinked rapidly, but obeyed, shifting away from the doorway. Morales approached me, but his eyes stayed on Aaron and Clara the entire time. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I whispered. "I am." "Did you consume anything they offered you this morning?" "No." Morales nodded once, a small but unmistakable sign of relief. Then he raised his voice, speaking loudly enough for the whole house to hear. "Mr. Reed, we need you to come with us now. There have been developments in your wife's case." Clara's face drained of color. What case? Morales didn't even look at her. "Mr. Reed, please gather anything important and step outside." I didn't move toward the stairs. Instead, I slid my hand beneath the dining table's edge, pressing the underside of the rail where Morales' recording device was taped. When I pulled my hand back, the tiny button was gone. Morales slipped it into his pocket with a subtle motion. Aaron saw the gesture. His face tightened. "What is that evidence?" Morales said simply. Aaron's voice cracked. "Evidence of what?" "Sit down," Morales ordered. "Both of you." Clara bristled. "We don't have to do anything you—" "Sit," Morales repeated, and his tone carried the full weight of authority. They sat. Another officer moved behind them. The air thickened. Clara glanced at the sink, panic flickering in her eyes. Morales followed her gaze. He walked to the sink, switched on the faucet, and sniffed the drain. His jaw clenched. "What was poured down this drain?" he asked. "Nothing," Clara said too quickly. "Coffee," I answered. Morales nodded once, never taking his eyes off them. "Officer, collect a sample from the trap." Clara's composure snapped. "You can't just barge in here and—" "Yes, I can." Morales cut in. "This is a crime scene." Aaron shot to his feet. "Crime? What crime? We didn't do anything." "Sit down," Morales commanded again. Aaron sat. Morales opened the blue folder on the table, flipping through the documents. As he scanned each page, his expression grew darker. Power of attorney. Transfer of property. Insurance modification, he read aloud. He held up the last page. And a heavily altered estate directive. All unsigned, thank God. Then he looked at them. "Where is the poison?" Clara's eyes widened. "Poison? What poison?" "This is ridiculous." Morales raised the recording device. "We heard everything. Every whisper. Every confession. Every plan." Aaron's face collapsed. "No." Clara shook her head violently. "No. You're twisting things. We were taking care of him. He's old. He's confused. He's none of those things," Morales snapped. "But you are liars. And killers." Aaron's breath sped up. "We didn't kill anyone?" "Your mother didn't die of natural causes," Morales said. "She was poisoned. Slowly. Over months. And digital records show manipulation to hide her increasing arsenic levels. Records accessed under your login, Mrs. Reed." Clara froze. Aaron turned to her. "Clara." She didn't answer. "You said—" His voice cracked. "You said it wouldn't be traced." "Shut up," she hissed. "No," Morales said firmly. "Let him talk." Aaron's defenses shattered. "I didn't want to. We owed so much money. Drexler said he'd kill us if we didn't pay." Clara said it was the only way. Clara stood abruptly. "Aaron, stop. Don't move," the officer behind her barked, gripping her arm. She froze again, but her eyes flashed with hatred, not at the officer. "At me." "This is your fault," she spat. "If you'd just signed the papers—" "Enough," Morales said. He turned to the officer. "Cuff her." The sound of metal clicking around Clara's wrists was surreal. Too sharp. Too real. Aaron watched, pale and trembling, as if the world he thought he controlled had suddenly tilted off its axis. "You're arresting her," he whispered. "And you," Morales said. "Both of you." Aaron slumped in his chair. Clara stared at the floor, jaw tight, her entire facade collapsing. I watched silently. My breath was shallow but steady. I wasn't triumphant. I wasn't angry. I wasn't relieved. I was exhausted. Morales approached me. "Mr. Reed, you're coming with us now. We'll take you somewhere safe. Somewhere they can't reach." I nodded. He placed a hand on my shoulder, steadying me. "Your wife fought for you. You should know that." I felt my throat tighten. "I know. Finally, I know." Clara suddenly twisted toward me, eyes blazing. She ruined everything, she screamed. If she had just died quicker. "Get her out," Morales ordered. The officer dragged her toward the door. Her screams echoed through the hallway, but they didn't reach me. Not really. They felt far away, like the distant cries of a storm already passing. Aaron didn't scream. He didn't fight. He just stared at his hands. When the officers pulled him to his feet, he looked at me for the briefest moment, an expression I will never forget. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't regret. It was emptiness. As they led them both outside, I leaned against the wall, letting out a long, shaky breath. My knees nearly buckled. Morales caught my arm. "You're safe now," he said. "No," I whispered. "I'm alive." "That's different." He nodded solemnly. "We have work to do. This goes far beyond your son and daughter-in-law. Drexler won't walk away from this easily." A faint tremor ran through me. "I know." Morales guided me out of the house. The air outside was cold, crisp, almost cleansing. For the first time in months, I felt the faintest spark of freedom. But the moment I reached the police car, a dark SUV turned onto my street. It slowed, stopped, and parked. Morales stiffened beside me. "That's him," he said quietly. I looked up. My breath caught in my throat. Drexler stepped out of the SUV, tall, calm, smiling faintly, as if none of this surprised him, as if he had been waiting. Morales moved in front of me. "Get in the car, Mr. Reed, now." But I couldn't look away from Drexler. He stood perfectly still. Then he raised one hand and pressed his finger to his lips. A silent warning, a promise, a threat. My blood ran cold. The officers formed a protective circle around me as Morales opened the back door of the cruiser. "Mr. Reed," he said urgently, "we need to leave." I stepped inside, heart-pounding breath uneven. As the car pulled away, I saw Drexler watching us in the rearview mirror, his eyes following until we turned the corner and disappeared from sight. The storm wasn't over. It was only beginning. The police cruiser sped away from my house, its siren silent, but its urgency unmistakable. I sat in the back seat with my hands clasped together, staring at the passing streets through a haze of exhaustion and disbelief. The morning light glinted off windshield storefronts and the wet pavement, but all I could see was Drexler's face, calm, confident, untouched by the fear that had consumed my life for months. Detective Morales sat in the passenger seat, speaking quickly into his radio. The officer driving kept glancing at the rearview mirror as if expecting the black SUV to appear again. "We're moving him to safe housing now," Morales said. 2 units remain on surveillance at the residence. All evidence collected, confirming transfer of suspects to holding. Static crackled in response, followed by a brief acknowledgement. Morales turned halfway in his seat to look at me. "You did well, Mr. Reed. Better than most people could, under circumstances like these." I swallowed. My voice was a rasp. "I didn't do anything." "You survived," he said. "That's not nothing." The words washed over me, but they didn't settle. Surviving didn't feel like a victory. Not yet. We drove out of the residential district and onto a quieter road lined with trees. The cruiser turned twice more, then pulled into the back parking lot of an old municipal building I barely recognized. The sign above the side entrance read Harbor Point Utilities Office, though the building looked like it hadn't been actively used in years. "This is temporary," Morales said, opening my door, "until we assess whether Drexler poses an immediate threat." "Immediate," I repeated, stepping out of the car with shaky legs. He was standing outside my house. Morales nodded grimly. "Which is exactly why we didn't bring you to the station. He's not stupid. He watches where people go. This place is off-grid for the next 12 hours. Inside the building was stark and dimly lit. The flickering fluorescent lights cast long shadows across the concrete floors. Morales led me to a small office with a desk, 2 chairs, and a broken clock on the wall. The air smelled faintly of dust and old paper. "Sit," he said gently. I lowered myself into a chair, feeling the weight of the past 24 hours crushing down on my shoulders. The silence of the room pressed in around me until Morales broke it. "We need to go through everything one more time," he said. "Every detail you remember about Margaret's last months, about Aaron and Clara, about Drexler. This is how we build the case airtight." I nodded, though my mind felt foggy. "All right." Morales perched on the edge of the desk. "You said earlier your wife tried to tell you something several times. That she stopped when Aaron or Clara entered the room." "Yes." My voice trembled. "I thought she was tired or confused. I didn't want to imagine the alternative. The alternative being what she eventually documented," Morales said softly. I nodded again. "Tell me about the day she collapsed," he continued. The memory came back in pieces, slow, painful, jagged. "She had been weak for weeks," I said. "Struggling to eat, struggling to walk. I insisted on taking her to the hospital, but she said she wanted to rest at home. She say anything else, I hesitated. She told me not to drink the coffee Clara made for me. She said the taste was off. I thought she was imagining things. I thought grief over our finances was affecting her mind." Morales didn't interrupt. He let the weight of the memory settle. "That was 2 days before she died," I whispered. We sat in silence for a moment. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. "And you never questioned the cause of death?" he asked gently. "They said heart failure," I replied. "It seemed clean, simple, acceptable. But I should have asked more questions." Morales leaned forward. "Don't blame yourself. Your wife was living with 2 people who were trying to kill both of you. You trusted your family. That's not a crime." "Trust can kill," I said. He didn't argue. A sharp buzzing interrupted the quiet Morales phone vibrating on the desk. He checked the screen, his brow furrowing. "Update from the evidence team," he said. "The coffee sample from your sink shows traces of digitalis. Not enough to kill outright, enough to weaken. Confuse. Make the next dose harder to detect." I swallowed hard. So they were planning a second round. "Yes," Morales said. "And that second round would have been lethal." My stomach churned. A knock sounded at the office door, and another officer entered carrying a folder thick with documents. "Detective," the officer said, "we finished processing the laptop from the residence. You'll want to see this." Morales opened the folder. His face darkened as he read. "What is it?" I asked. He closed the folder slowly. "Your son was communicating with Drexler directly. Large transfers, threatening messages, timelines." I closed my eyes. Dear God. And this, Morales continued, pulling out a printed email thread, suggests Drexler told them exactly what would happen if they failed to pay him back. What he said, he would handle the situation. I looked down at my hands, feeling suddenly hollow. He meant Margaret. "And you?" Morales added. The truth hit like a punch to the chest. "How do we stop him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "We gather enough evidence to isolate him legally," Morales said. "And then we move in for the arrest. But we need time, and cooperation, and caution." Before he could continue, the radio on his shoulder crackled loudly. "Unit 12 to Morales," a voice said. "We've got movement. Suspect's SUV is circling near Reed residence again. No sign of aggressive action yet." Morales straightened. "Copy. Keep eyes on him. Do not engage until backup arrives." Another burst of static, then silence. Morales turned to me. "He's watching your house. He knows we have you." "What is he planning?" I asked. "He's evaluating," Morales said. "He's deciding whether to flee or fight." "My guess is he fights." I shivered. "We need to get you out of town," he continued. "But first we need the rest of the evidence. You said Margaret kept more documents hidden." In the house, I said. Then we need them. Morales replied. Tonight. I tensed. I can't go back there. You won't be alone, he assured. We'll go in together. Quietly. But we need those documents before Drexler does. They prove everything. I closed my eyes for a long moment, feeling the weight of fear and obligation circling me like vultures. All right, I finally said. I'll go. Good, Morales said, rising to his feet. We move at dusk. Hours passed as Morales and the other officers reviewed evidence, made calls, and prepared for the retrieval operation. I drifted between thoughts, Margaret's smile, Margaret's fear, Aaron's betrayal, Clara's cold precision, Drexler's silent threat. When dusk finally came, the sky was a muted violet. Morales handed me a bulletproof vest. Put this on, he said. Just a precaution. My hands shook as I fastened the straps. The vest felt heavy foreign, but oddly grounding. 2 unmarked cars pulled around the side of the building, lights off. Morales gestured for me to follow. We're keeping this small, he said. Less attention, less noise. We climbed into the first car. The engine started without headlights. We took side roads, cutting through alleys and service lanes, avoiding main streets as we approached my neighborhood from the back. My breath grew shallow with every block. At last, Morales raised a hand. Stop here. The car rolled to a halt 1 street over from my house. We stepped out quietly. Shadows stretched across the pavement, long and thin under the street lamps. Morales pointed. Your house is around the corner. We enter through the side gate. Officers are in position. I nodded, though my legs felt weak. We moved in silence. Every crunch of gravel felt impossibly loud. My heart hammered in my ears. We reached the backyard fence. Morales gently pushed the gate open. The hinges creaked. Inside, everything looked unchanged. My house stood quiet and still dark, except for a sliver of light from the downstairs hallway. Where are the documents? Morales whispered. In the basement, I answered. Behind the water heater. He nodded and signaled to the team. We moved toward the side door, the one Margaret and I used to use in summer when bringing in garden supplies. The doorknob was cold under my fingers. I hesitated. Morales stepped closer. It's all right. I'm right here. I pushed the door open. The house was silent. Too silent. We stepped inside, flashlights sweeping across the floor in narrow beams. A soft sound drifted from upstairs, a creak, followed by a single deliberate footstep. Morales raised his hand sharply. I froze. More footsteps followed, slow, measured, coming down the stairs. Morales whispered, "Someone's here." My blood ran cold. The steps moved closer. A shadow appeared on the staircase wall, long, tall, unmistakably male. Morales positioned himself between me and the stairs, gun raised. "Harbor Point Police," he shouted. "Show your hands." The footsteps stopped. Silence stretched thick and consuming. Then a voice descended the stairs. Calm, even, almost amused. "Well, it said, I was wondering when you'd come back." It was Drexler. He stepped into view, his expression mild, his hands casually tucked into the pockets of his coat. As if this was his house. As if he belonged here. Morales aimed. Hands where I can see them. Slowly, Drexler lifted his hands. A faint smile curled at the corner of his mouth. "Detective Morales," he said, "you're making a mistake." "No," Morales replied, his voice steel. "You're done." Drexler tipped his head. "Am I?" His eyes flicked to me. Cold, predatory. "You brought him back here?" he asked quietly. Bold. Morales stepped forward. "Turn around. Now." Drexler's smile widened, and then everything happened at once. Drexler didn't move at first. He just stood on the stairs, hands raised, that same unsettling calm, settling over him like a second skin. Morales kept his gun leveled at him, steady, controlled, but I could see tension tightening his jaw. The air between the three of us felt electrified, coiled, dangerous, ready to snap at the slightest misstep. "Turn around," Morales repeated. Drexler tilted his head. "Detective, you're pointing that firearm at the wrong man." "Now," Morales barked. Finally, Drexler obeyed. He turned slowly, deliberately, as though indulging a child's demand rather than complying with police orders. When his back faced us, Morales stepped forward cautiously. "Hands behind your head," he ordered. Drexler interlocked his fingers. Morales moved in. But even before Morales touched him, something felt wrong. Drexler stood too still, too relaxed. The house was too quiet. A man like Drexler didn't walk into a home alone, not if he expected confrontation. He didn't rely on luck. He relied on control. And suddenly, I felt the truth drop through me like ice. "He's not alone," I whispered. Morales froze mid-step. Drexler chuckled. "Detective, your instincts are sharp, but late." A floorboard creaked behind us. I spun around, heart slamming into my throat. A man stepped from the shadows of the hallway, tall, broad face covered with a black mask. Another followed behind him, emerging from the kitchen. 2, maybe more. How long had they been in my house? Morales pivoted, gun-shifting position. "Police, don't move." But a third man appeared behind him, fast and silent. Morales barely had time to turn before the man swung. The blow hit his arm, forcing his aim upward. The gunshot exploded, the sound deafening in the narrow hall. Plaster rained from the ceiling. "Detective," I cried. Morales stumbled, but didn't fall. He elbowed the attacker in the ribs hard, then drove his shoulder into him. The man grunted, staggering back. "Run!" Morales shouted at me. "Samuel, run!" But my legs felt rooted to the floor. The shock of the attack, the arrival of Drexler's men, the sudden chaos, it all tangled around me at once. Another man lunged from the side. Morales fired one precise shot, hitting the attacker's shoulder, sending him crashing into the wall. The man screamed, clutching his arm. In that moment of distraction, Drexler moved. He swung around with sudden speed, ramming his elbow into Morales' ribs. Morales gasped the impact, forcing him to drop to one knee. Drexler snatched the gun from his hand and kicked it across the floor. Detective, Drexler said, "Breath steady, I warned you. You stepped into a game you can't win." Morales forced himself to stand again, blood dripping down his arm. "You'll be in cuffs before sunrise." "Doubtful," Drexler replied. He made a subtle gesture. 2 men moved toward me at once. No Morales shouted. He charged forward, slamming himself between us. One of Drexler's men grabbed him from behind, pulling his arms back. Morales kicked backward, catching the man's knee, but another grabbed him by the throat. "Stop!" I shouted, voice cracking. "Please stop!" Drexler stepped down from the stairs, brushing imaginary dust from his sleeve. "Samuel, Samuel. I told you not to get involved. Your wife didn't listen either." My blood turned to ice. "Don't you dare speak her name," I whispered. He smiled. "She made things complicated. She dug where she shouldn't, and you're doing the same." I backed up instinctively, my shoulders hitting the hallway wall. Drexler approached until he stood just a few feet from me. "You could have let your son handle everything," he said. He was loyal. Misguided, but loyal. Clara was useful. But you, he shook his head slowly, you were always the loose end, even before Margaret became suspicious. I felt nausea twist inside me. You poisoned her. Yes, Drexler said calmly. Through people who trusted me, people who thought I had their best interests at heart. That's how this works, Samuel. Trust is the poison. The rest is logistics. Why? My voice shook. Why destroy her? She interfered with my revenue, Drexler said. Your son owed me money, more than he could ever repay. Margaret saw the transfers. She confronted him. She confronted Clara. But eventually, she found her way to me. My breath caught. She came to you. She believed she could reason with me, Drexler said. She was wrong. He took another step toward me. She begged for your life, you know, he added softly. Told me to take everything, just not you. She thought you were fragile, vulnerable. I clenched my fists until my nails dug into my palms. He smirked. She was right. A surge of rage exploded inside me. Samuel Morales choked out, struggling against the man restraining him. Don't. Drexler lifted a hand, silencing him. Enough conversation. We need to leave. Quickly, bring him. Two men moved toward me again. Instinct and terror propelled me. I shoved myself sideways, dodging the first man by inches. My shoulders slammed into the hallway cabinet. A framed photo of Margaret crashed to the floor, glass shattering across the tiles. The men closed in. Morales, I cried. The detective swung his head back, smashing it into the nose of the man holding him. The attacker yelped in pain. Morales tore free, grabbed the fallen man's gun, and fired twice. One bullet hit the wall. The second hit the man advancing on me, dropping him instantly. Get down, Morales shouted. I ducked just as another man charged. Morales fired again, grazing the assailant's leg. The man stumbled, but not enough. Drexler didn't flinch. He simply stepped aside as the chaos erupted around him. Finish this, he snapped. The man lunged for me. My hand shot out blindly, grabbing the broken picture frame from the floor. When he reached me, I swung it with everything I had. The jagged edge sliced across his cheek, sending him stumbling backward with a howl. Morales grabbed my arm. We need to get you out. Now. He pulled me toward the kitchen, but more footsteps thundered down the stairs. Additional men responding to the gunshots. We're outnumbered, Morales muttered. Back door. We ran for the back door, but Drexler's voice cut through the chaos. Samuel, you can't run forever. Morales didn't hesitate. He shoved me forward, firing behind us to keep the attackers at bay. Bullets splintered wood. A vase shattered. The refrigerator door dented inward from a punch of force. We reached the mudroom. Morales yanked the door open. Cold night air rushed in. Go, he shouted. I bolted out into the backyard, stumbling across the grass. Morales followed, firing one last shot before slamming the door shut behind him. We sprinted toward the side gate, but the sound of a loud engine made both of us skid to a stop. A dark SUV screeched into the alley, the same one I'd seen before. It blocked the pathway. A man leaned out of the window. There, Morales grabbed me and pulled me between two parked trash bins as bullets tore through the fence. Wood splintered above my head. This way, Morales hissed. He guided me into the narrow gap between my house and the neighbors, squeezing us through until we reached the front yard. No cars, Morales muttered. We need to make it to the street. We rushed forward. But another masked man appeared on the sidewalk. He lunged. Morales tackled him, and the two men crashed onto the grass. The attacker swung wildly, catching Morales in the shoulder. Morales grunted, but didn't let go. He twisted the attacker's wrist until the man dropped his weapon. Run! Samuel Morales shouted. I'm not leaving you. You have to run. More footsteps pounded behind me. I ran. My heart slammed against my ribs. My lungs burned. The streetlights blurred. I sprinted toward the only house I knew had a working alarm system, the Blakeleys 2 doors down. Behind me, I heard Morales shout in pain. I turned back. He was on one knee, fighting off another attacker. Drexler stepped into the light behind him. Gun raised. "No," I shouted. Drexler fired. Morales collapsed. The sound hollowed me. Everything inside me shattered. "Morales," I cried, voice tearing from my throat. Drexler turned his gaze to me. The calm was gone. Now there was only hunger. "Get him," he ordered. I ran again faster than I thought my old legs could move. I reached the Blakely's porch, slammed my hand onto the doorbell, and pounded the door with my fist. "Help! Help me!" Lights inside flicked on. A dog barked. The masked men rounded the corner. I looked behind me, breath shaking so hard my vision blurred. Drexler stood at the end of the driveway, watching, waiting, calculating. The porch light snapped on. The door opened halfway. "Samuel." "What on earth? Call the police," I gasped. "Now." The neighbor's eyes widened. The masked men froze momentarily, deterred by witnesses. Drexler didn't move. He gave me one last look, and then he lifted 2 fingers to his forehead. A mock salute, a promise that this wasn't over. He turned and disappeared into the shadows as the masked men retreated with him. I sagged against the porch railing, shaking uncontrollably. The neighbor dialed emergency services. Sirens began rising in the distance. But the only sound I heard was the echo of the gunshot that took Morales down, and the realization that Drexler wasn't running away. He was regrouping, preparing, coming back. For me. The sirens grew louder as I stood shaking on the Blakely's porch, gripping the railing as though it were the last solid thing left in my world. A cold wind swept down the street, carrying the faint smell of gunpowder from where Morales had fallen. My neighbor, Helen Blakely, stood beside me in her robe, clutching her phone to her ear. "Yes, officers, please. He's terrified. Someone attacked him. Yes, right outside." Her voice trembled as she glanced at me. "Yes, he's safe for now." Safe. The word felt foreign, wrong. Nothing about the last hour resembled safety. Within minutes, the street filled with police vehicles, flashing lights, painting the houses in frantic shades of red and blue. Officers moved quickly, securing the perimeter, approaching me with cautious urgency. Helen guided me down the steps as an officer took my elbow. "Mr. Reed, come with me," he said gently. "We need to get you into protective custody." I nodded weakly, glancing once more toward the shadows where Drexler had vanished. The space was empty now. Quiet. But the quiet was threatening, taunting. They led me to an ambulance parked beside a cruiser. I sat inside while a paramedic checked my pulse, my blood pressure, my eyes. "You're in shock," she murmured. "Try to breathe slowly." I tried. It didn't work. "Detective Morales," I whispered. "Where is he?" The paramedic paused, then lowered her voice. "They're working on him now. Just breathe, okay?" Her words slid through me like ice. A moment later, an officer closed the doors behind her, sealing me in the small, bright space. My hands trembled uncontrollably. I had dragged Morales into this. Margaret had tried to protect me, but now someone else had paid the price. Guilt seeped through my bones. The doors finally opened again, and a different officer appeared. "Mr. Reed," he said, "we're relocating you now." "Where?" My voice was barely audible. "A safe location outside city limits." I hesitated. "And Morales?" The officer's jaw clenched. "He's alive. That's all I can confirm." Relief and grief tangled painfully in my chest. I nodded. They escorted me to the back of an unmarked vehicle. The city blurred past as we drove, streetlights smearing into faint streaks through the window. I leaned back, eyes closed, trying to steady myself. But all I could see was Morales, falling blood, blooming across his shirt. After half an hour, the car turned down a remote road lined with tall pines. A solitary cabin appeared at the end of the lane, a weathered structure set deep into the woods. "This is where we'll keep you until morning," the officer said. "Internal Affairs and State Police are coordinating with the Harbor Point unit. You'll be transferred once everything is arranged." "What about Drexler?" I asked. "He won't come out here," the officer said. "We've blocked the surrounding roads. There are units stationed at every intersection. But I'd learned not to trust assurances, not after everything." Still, I followed him inside. The cabin was simple wooden floors, stone fireplace, a small kitchenette. A cot had been set up near the wall. "You'll be safe here for the night," the officer said. "I'll be stationed outside." He stepped back through the door, closing it behind him. The silence returned. The solitude felt different this time, heavier, as though the walls held their breath. I lowered myself onto the cot, exhaustion pulling at me. My body ached in places I didn't know could ache. My mind kept replaying the moment Drexler lifted his hand in that mock salute, calm, confident, promising more violence. Margaret's notebook sat in my coat pocket. I slid it out and held it between my palms. The pages felt thin, fragile, yet filled with a strength my wife carried even when she knew she was dying. "I'm so sorry," I whispered into the dim cabin light. "I should have seen. I should have listened." The cabin clock ticked quietly in the background. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. My thoughts drifted in and out, never settling, never resting. A faint crackle of static jolted me upright. The police radio on the table sputtered with half-formed phrases. "East sector, possible movement, confirm identity." Another burst of static, dark SUV spotted near Ridge Road. My blood chilled. Ridge Road was close, too close. I stood and crossed to the window, peeking through the blinds. The driveway was empty except for the police vehicle. The officer stood near the trees, talking into his radio. I exhaled slowly and turned back toward the cot. A sudden thud hit the porch. I froze. The officer outside didn't react. Either he hadn't heard it or another thud. Louder. I reached for the table, gripping the edge until my knuckles whitened. The radio crackled again. "Unit 4, confirm visual." I didn't wait. I rushed to the door and swung it open. The officer was gone. His flashlight lay on the ground, its beam shaking faintly as it rolled to a stop. "Officer," I called, voice trembling. No answer. I stepped back instinctively, heart pounding. An uneasy silence settled over the trees. Something rustled in the underbrush, a snap of a twig, a heavy crunch of footsteps. Then a voice. Calm, familiar, terrifying. Samuel. My breath fractured. "Come now," Drexler called softly from somewhere beyond the trees. "You didn't think I'd let the evening end without speaking to you, did you?" I stumbled backward into the cabin and slammed the door. My hands shook as I locked the deadbolt and shoved a chair beneath the handle. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. The radio cried out again. Officer down, location unknown." Terror gripped my spine. I backed away from the door, scanning the cabin for anything I could use. A lamp, a poker, a piece of firewood. I grabbed the poker from the hearth and clutched it tightly. Another voice rose outside. Not Drexler's this time, a younger one, rougher. "He's inside." They were surrounding the cabin. Panic surged through me. The back door. I turned and ran through the small kitchen. The back door was old, warped from years of weather. I shoved it open and burst into the freezing night air. The woods were thick here, dense trunks, overlapping branches. If I could slip between them, maybe I'd get enough distance before Their flashlights flared behind me. I ran. Branches whipped against my arms, my face. Roots snagged my shoes. The cold air burned in my lungs. My age caught up with me fast, but fear carried me farther than I thought possible. Behind me, Drexler's voice echoed. "Don't make this difficult, Samuel." My breath came in ragged gasps. I stumbled over a fallen log, tumbling to the ground. Pain flared in my shoulder, but I scrambled to my feet. I could hear them closing in footsteps, thudding leaves crunching. I veered sharply to the right, heading deeper into the trees. Light swept the forest floor behind me. A shout echoed. "Over there?" Another voice replied. "Don't lose him." I ducked between two boulders, chest heaving. My pulse hammered in my ears. I pressed myself against the cold stone, praying the darkness would hide me. The footsteps drew closer. A beam of light swept across the trees. Then, silence. Total silence. Even the wind paused. I dared a slow breath. Suddenly, a flashlight beam struck the boulder inches from my face. "Got him." Hands grabbed me, yanking me from the rocks. I swung the fire poker wildly, striking someone's wrist. He cursed, dropping his light. Another man rushed me, tackling me to the ground. My ribs ached beneath his weight. "Hold him," someone shouted. I struggled, but it was useless. I felt the cold bite of a zip tie cinch around my wrists. Pain shot through my arms. They dragged me upright. Drexler emerged from the shadows, stepping into the path of their lights. His smile returned. "Took us longer than expected," he said. "Stubborn old man." I glared at him, breath trembling. "Morales will find you." Morales, Drexler repeated with a quiet chuckle. "Detectives fall. Money lasts." He gestured to the men. "Let's go." They pulled me forward deeper into the woods, away from the cabin, away from the faint hope I'd clung to. My feet stumbled over uneven ground, my lungs burning cold air slicing through me like knives. "You should have signed the papers," Drexler said. "You should have trusted your son. But you squeezed him too tightly. You left him no choice." "He had a choice," I rasped. "He chose you." "No," Drexler corrected softly. "I chose him." We reached a clearing. A black SUV waited there. Its engine idled. Drexler stepped closer to me. "This is where your story ends, Samuel." But as he reached for something inside his coat, distant sirens pierced the forest. Drexler's eyes narrowed. A voice shouted through a loudspeaker. "This is the harbor point. Police, drop your weapons." Lights exploded across the clearing, dozens of flashlights, red-blue strobes bouncing off tree trunks. "Move!" Drexler shouted. Gunfire erupted. Officers surged into the clearing. I dropped to the ground, rolling behind a fallen tree as chaos exploded around me. Someone shouted my name. "Samuel." I recognized that voice. Ryan. The man Walter had mentioned. The investigator. He sprinted toward me, sliding to my side. "I've got you. Stay down." Gunshots cracked overhead. Drexler's men scattered. Ryan cut the zip ties with a knife. "Can you run?" he demanded. I think so." "Then move." He hauled me to my feet and pulled me toward the cover of the police line. Officers shouted orders. Lights flared. Bodies moved like shadows. Behind us, Drexler's voice roared through the trees. "Samuel." I didn't look back. Ryan practically carried me the last 10 yards. We reached the police vehicles as officers advanced deeper into the woods. I collapsed against a cruiser, lungs heaving. Ryan crouched beside me. "You're safe now," he said, breathless. "You held on, just like Walter said you would." "He's gone," I gasped. "Drexler, he got away." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Not for long." I closed my eyes, trembling violently. But this time the trembling wasn't only fear. It was relief. For the first time in months, I felt the possibility of survival, of justice, of Margaret's truth finally breaking through the darkness. And I knew, as the sirens wailed into the night and officers vanished into the forest, this wasn't the end. But it was the turning point. The hospital ceiling tiles looked like pieces of an endless gray puzzle stretching far above me as if the world itself had been stripped down to nothing but cold light and quiet echoes. I lay there wrapped in a thin blanket, drifting somewhere between exhaustion and disbelief. My wrists were raw from the zip ties. My throat burned from running through the forest. My mind felt like a cracked pane of glass, shattered, but still holding together in a fragile shape. Someone cleared their throat beside me. I turned my head slowly, painfully. Officer Ryan stood there with a cup of hospital coffee in his hand. He looked worse than he had in the woods, tired, bruised, streaked with dirt, and somehow still alert. "Morning," he said. "Is it morning?" My voice felt rusted. "Barely." He set the coffee beside the bed. "Doctors say you're dehydrated, bruised, exhausted, but otherwise, somehow alive." "Somehow," I repeated. He pulled a chair over and sat elbows on his knees. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't tense. It was the silence of two people who had outrun something unspeakable and were only now letting their lungs catch up. Finally, he said, "Drexler got away." I stared at the ceiling again. A single fluorescent bulb flickered like it was struggling to stay alive too. "I figured," I whispered, "but we're closing in." Ryan leaned back. State police and federal agents combed the woods all night. They found tire tracks from the SUV. They found shell casings. They found blood that wasn't yours. "Was it Drexler's?" I asked. "We don't know yet. Lab's running tests." He rubbed a hand over his jaw. "He's hurt, though, and he's desperate. Both of those things work in our favor." I closed my eyes. Somewhere in the hall, a nurse rolled a cart past, wheels squeaking. Machines beeped at steady intervals. Life was continuing in soft, mundane ways, even while mine felt like it had been ripped into two different timelines before Margaret's death and after everything she had tried to warn me about. Ryan exhaled slowly. "There's more." I opened my eyes. "What is it, Morales?" "He's awake." A tremor of relief ran through me, so sudden I had to grip the blanket to steady myself. "He's alive," I said, as if saying it out loud would make it more true. "Yeah." "Tough bastard," Ryan said with a half smile. "He took a bullet to the shoulder. Lost a lot of blood. But he's stable." I felt myself sit a little straighter. "I need to see him." "You will." "Not yet. He's still groggy from surgery." Ryan hesitated. "But when he did wake up, he asked for you." Emotion surged unexpectedly, tightening my chest. Morales had nearly died because he believed Margaret. Because he believed in me. Because he refused to let corruption swallow this town whole. Ryan stood. "There's something else you should know. The police interrogated your son last night." A cold ache spread through me. Is he still denying everything I asked quietly? No. Ryan's eyes darkened. He's doing something worse. I clenched my jaw. "What?" "He's saying Drexler blackmailed him." My breath caught. Ryan continued. "He claims Drexler manipulated him, threatened him, promised to clear his debts. Says he didn't know the full scope of the plan. Says he was scared." I let the words settle like ash. "He's lying," I said. Ryan nodded once. "We know." I looked at my bandaged wrists, remembering the weight of my son's hand on my shoulder. The night he handed me a cup of poison. The warm smile. The casual cruelty. The calm execution of a death sentence. "Is Margaret's notebook safe?" I asked. "Locked in evidence. Signed, sealed, triple-logged." Ryan paused. "It's already been copied. Her statements, her notes, her timeline. They're weak alone, but combined with everything else." He nodded slowly. "It's devastating." A soft knock came at the door. Ryan stood as Detective Lila Carter entered, the same woman who had helped coordinate the rescue. Her dark hair was tied tightly at the back of her head, her posture rigid with focus. Mr. Reed, she said, stepping closer. How are you feeling? As if someone shoved me through a forest, I replied. She gave a faint, sympathetic smile. We'll keep this brief. You've been through enough. Ryan leaned against the wall as she pulled out a tablet. We need to go over the sequence of events from last night, she said. Officially. What you heard, what you saw. Anything, Drexler said. I nodded. I remember everything. And I did. Even the parts I wished I didn't. She started recording. I spoke. I told them about the thud on the porch, the missing officer. Drexler's voice in the trees, calm and casual, like we were old friends sharing a memory. I told them about the men who grabbed me the zip ties, the clearing in the woods. Drexler's words. His attempt to rewrite my reality. Detective Carter listened, eyes-sharp fingers moving swiftly across the screen. He used past tense when referring to your son, she said, replaying one moment. That's important. It shows Drexler sees Adam as expendable. Ryan added, means Adam wasn't as protected as he thought. I didn't comment. My heart felt brittle like thin glass. When the questioning ended, Detective Carter stood. One more thing, she said. You won't be returning to your house. I nodded. I assumed. It's still an active crime scene, and Drexler likely knows its layout better than we do. We're relocating you to a secured facility under state protection. No public access, no leaks. And Adam, I asked. He's in county jail, she said. On suicide watch. My stomach twisted into something cold and heavy. A part of me, a small, fragile part, ached at the image of my son alone in a concrete cell. But that part was drowned quickly by memories of Margaret's trembling hands, her gray skin, her weakening voice. He made his choices, I whispered. Yes, Carter said gently. He did. She turned to leave, but paused at the door. Mr. Reed, your wife was right about everything. Her notes, her instincts, her courage, it saved your life. She glanced at me with unexpected warmth. She was the kind of woman investigators dream of helping, but rarely get the chance to. When she left the room, fell quiet again. Ryan remained seated. I exhaled slowly. I want to see Margaret's brother, Walter. He's been calling, Ryan said. He wants to know if you're alive. Can I see him? Ryan nodded. I'll bring him in. 10 minutes later, the door opened again, and Walter stepped inside. He looked older than he had 2 days ago, hair disheveled, eyes swollen from lack of sleep and worry. When he saw me, he rushed to the bed. Sam, he breathed. God, Sam. His arms wrapped around me before I could respond. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of the familiar embrace settle into my bones. You're alive, he said. They said you were hurt, but stable, but I needed to see it for myself. I'm alive, I murmured. Thanks to you. You got me out. You pushed me to the library. Without that, he shook his head. No. Margaret did this. She started it. She was stronger than all of us. His voice cracked. I squeezed his hand. We sat in silence for several seconds before Walter spoke again. They told me Morales is alive, and that Drexler escaped. He won't get far, I said, trying to hold on to the confidence Ryan had shown earlier. They're tracking him. Walter swallowed hard. He'll try again. I know. He hesitated, then pulled an envelope from his jacket. What's that? I asked. Something Margaret mailed to me, he said. It arrived this morning. My breath stopped. Slowly, carefully, he handed it to me. The envelope was addressed in Margaret's handwriting. That looping script I'd seen for decades on birthday cards, grocery lists, love notes tucked into my lunchbox. My name, Samuel. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, her words, her voice in ink. Sam, if you're reading this, then things have reached a point I couldn't prevent. I don't know how much you know yet, but I need you to trust your instincts. Trust Walter. Trust yourself. And please, please don't let them turn you into the villain. You are the man I chose every day for 40 years. The world deserves to know that. Your life matters. Stay alive. Margaret. My vision blurred. Walter placed a hand on my shoulder as I pressed the letter to my chest, breathing through the tidal wave of emotion. Ryan cleared his throat gently from near the door. Mr. Reed, we're moving you in an hour. The secure site is ready. I nodded without looking up. Walter squeezed my arm. I'll be there. I'm not leaving you alone. As the hour passed, nurses checked my vitals. Officers gathered outside the room. The hallway buzzed with quiet urgency. A wheelchair was brought in, even though I could technically walk. Protocol, they said. Protection, safety, words that still felt like strangers. Before they moved me, Ryan leaned in close. You need to understand something, he said. Drexler isn't running. He's repositioning. Men like him don't disappear. They adapt. They retaliate. I know, I whispered. And he's not after evidence anymore. Ryan looked me dead in the eyes. He's after you. Walter. Anyone tied to Margaret's notes. A cold fear slid through me. But we're not letting him win, Ryan said. We'll finish this. Morales will finish this when he's recovered. And you, he put a steady hand on my shoulder. You're the key witness who lived. I swallowed hard, gripping Margaret's letter tightly in my fist. Then, I'll stay alive, I said quietly. For her. Ryan nodded once firmly. That's the plan. They wheeled me out of the room, down the hall, toward elevators guarded by armed officers, toward an uncertain safety and a storm still gathering somewhere in the shadows beyond the hospital walls. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something solid beneath my fear. Purpose. And a promise I intended to keep. The drive to the secure facility took nearly an hour, though the landscape outside blurred into nothing more than streaks of muted greens and grays. I sat in the back of the armored SUV, Margaret's letter clutched in my hands like a fragile lifeline. Ryan sat beside me while two state officers drove in silence. No one spoke. No one dared to. The fear that had chased us through the forest still lingered like fog in the air. It was only when the vehicle finally slowed and turned onto a private road that I exhaled for the first time in what felt like days. The facility was tucked deep into the wood's steel fencing motion sensors, a wide gravel courtyard illuminated by floodlights. It looked more like a bunker than a safe house. Welcome to your home for the next few days, Ryan said as the SUV rolled to a stop. I nodded, though the word home felt foreign. My only home had been the one Margaret and I built together, and that house now sat behind yellow tape, a crime scene full of shattered memories. They led me inside through reinforced doors into a surprisingly warm interior. Wooden walls, simple furniture, a fireplace already lit. A small dining table stood in the corner beside a kitchenette. A hallway led to 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. Check everything, Ryan said to the officers. Then seal the doors. They dispersed, quickly moving with practiced efficiency. Ryan turned back to me. You'll stay in the main bedroom. Walter will be here shortly. He had to finish paperwork at the hospital. What about Morales? I asked. He's stable but sedated, Ryan said. He'll make it, Sam, and he plans to testify. He said he owes Margaret that. Emotion tightened my throat again. I nodded. Ryan placed a hand on my shoulder. You rest. No one gets in or out without clearance. Drexler won't find you here. He left soon after needing to meet with federal agents in town. When the door locked behind him, silence filled the room once more. It wasn't the dangerous silence from before. This one was softer. Heavy, yes. Lonely, yes. But it didn't feel like an enemy. I sank onto the couch and held Margaret's letter in my lap. Your life matters. Stay alive. I read the words again and again until they blurred. When the knock finally came an hour later, I nearly jumped. But it was a coded knock, 3 slow taps, then 2 quick ones. Walter. The officers confirmed him before unlocking the door. He stepped inside carrying a small duffel bag. His shoulders sagged with exhaustion, but when he saw me, he forced a tired smile. You look better than you did in the hospital, he said. I feel worse, I replied. We shared a brief, humorless laugh before he dropped the bag and joined me on the couch. How much did you sleep, he asked. Not enough. Yeah, he whispered. Me neither. For a while we said nothing. The fire crackled softly. The facility lights hummed above us. Outside, a patrol car circled the perimeter in slow, protective loops. Eventually, Walter leaned forward, elbows on his knees. They found something else in Margaret's storage unit. My heart jolted. What did they find? A flash drive? He ran a hand over his face. She must have hidden it before the poisoning made her too weak. Ryan said the data team started going through it this afternoon. I straightened. What was on it? Everything, Walter whispered. Every transaction she traced, every ghost account Drexler created. The offshore bank where he funneled the stolen city funds. The shell company he used to launder them. He even kept the spreadsheets she compiled. Sam. She built a complete case. My breath caught as the truth washed over me. Margaret hadn't just suspected Drexler. She had proven him guilty. She had gathered enough evidence to dismantle his entire empire, and she had done it while dying terrified and alone. Walter's voice cracked. Your wife was a genius. A damn genius. I swallowed hard. And she trusted the wrong people. Walter looked at me, and for the first time since Margaret's death, I saw something other than grief in his eyes. Admiration. She trusted the right ones, too, he said. She trusted Morales. She trusted me. And she trusted you. A lump rose in my throat. She knew you'd finish what she started. Walter continued. Even if you didn't know it yet. A soft chime suddenly echoed from the monitor on the wall. One of the officers appeared at the doorway. Mr. Reed, Detective Ryan is here to see you. Walter and I both stood as Ryan entered, his face tight with an intensity that made my heart lurch. Good, he said. You're both here. We need to talk. What happened? I asked. Ryan stepped closer. We found Drexler. The air froze, where Walter demanded. Abandoned farm outside Harbor Point, Ryan said. He was hiding in a grain silo, alone. Was he arrested? I asked. Ryan hesitated. He's dead. For several seconds, none of us moved. Dead, I repeated slowly. Ryan nodded once. Gunshot wound. Single round to the chest, no signs of a struggle. Walter frowned. Suicide. No weapon. Ryan replied. No prints, no casing, no residue. My breath stalled. Then someone killed him, I whispered. Ryan gave a grim nod. Someone tied to the same corruption ring Margaret uncovered. Someone who didn't want him talking. A chilling quiet settled over us. Ryan continued. But there's more. Whoever killed Drexler wiped his phone, his laptop, and every traceable device. But they didn't find Margaret's flash drive. And that drive connects them all. So the case isn't over, I said softly. It's bigger. It's much bigger, Ryan said. But now we have everything we need to go after them. I felt Margaret's letter in my hand, still warm from where I'd been holding it. Good, I whispered. She deserves that. Walter placed a hand on my shoulder, grounding me. "We'll help them finish it." Ryan nodded. "We'll be moving you again tomorrow morning. A federal safe facility this time. Higher security. More distance from Harbor Point." I closed my eyes and exhaled. Whatever it takes. He gave a small, reassuring smile. "We're almost there, Sam." After he left, Walter and I returned to the couch. The fire had burned low, casting soft shadows across the walls. My body finally began to ease just a fraction, but enough for me to realize how deeply the exhaustion ran. "You should rest," Walter said. "I'll stay up. Keep watch." "You need rest too," I replied. He shook his head. "Not yet." I lay down on the couch, pulling the blanket over me. The cushions were firm, the light dim, the air warm. For the first time in months, I felt the edges of sleep tugging at me, not from fear or poison or shock, but from gradual unwinding. Walter sat in the nearby chair, eyes fixed on the window, as if daring the darkness outside to move. "Walter," I murmured, before sleep claimed me. "Yeah, thank you." He didn't speak at first. Then softly, "She loved you more than anything, Sam. She fought for you until her last breath. Now, we fight for her." The words wrapped around me like a final layer of protection. I drifted into sleep. Hours later, dawn crept gently over the horizon, casting muted gold across the forest surrounding the facility. Birds began to stir. A faint breeze brushed against the windows. I woke slowly. For once, not from terror. Walter was still in the chair, dozing now, a blanket draped over him that I didn't remember being there. The room was quiet, peaceful. I stood stretching carefully and walked to the window. Beyond the fence, sunlight glinted through the trees, illuminating paths no longer filled with fear. The world outside had not changed, but I had. Margaret had fought to reveal the truth. Morales had nearly died to defend it. Walter had risked everything to protect me. Ryan had put his career on the line to follow the evidence wherever it led. Now it was my turn. I reached into my pocket and pulled out her letter again. "Your life matters. Stay alive." "I will," I whispered. "And I'll finish this. For you." The door opened behind me and Ryan's voice filled the room. "Ready to go, Sam?" I turned, taking one last slow look at the sunrise. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." As we stepped out into the morning, a strange strength settled in my chest. Not the strength of a young man, but the strength of a survivor who had been remade by truth, by pain, by love, and by the quiet courage of a woman who refused to let evil win. I followed them toward the car, toward justice, toward whatever came next. And a thought rose in my heart, quiet but certain. Margaret was finally free. And soon, I would be too. If you've reached the end of this journey with me, I truly thank you. Tell me in the comments what moment shocked you the most. If you want more stories of survival justice and unexpected heroes, make sure to like the video and subscribe. Your support helps these stories live on.